Hi everybody, foXnoMad here, and today I want to help you travel smarter by showing you the latest in Google Stadia, the Stadia controller, and why this streaming gaming service might not be quite as mobile as it seems. But first, let's take a look at Stadia. Stadia is Google's platform which lets you stream games directly through a web browser on your laptop, on your mobile phone, or through a Chromecast TV. And over the past year, there have been a lot of changes and updates to Stadia, including a free tier so that you can now use Stadia for free, an announcement at CES 2021 that some LG TVs are going to ship with the Stadia app inside, and the latest announcement, which is probably the biggest announcement for iOS users, is that you can now use Stadia through the Safari browser on your iPhone or iPad. And although you probably don't want to bring a gaming console with you everywhere, Stadia does come with this Stadia controller which you can use, which lets you game directly through your browser, so you have the control experience without having to bring the console. But more about this controller in a second. Let's first start off with the latest changes to Stadia. Stadia, like a lot of Google services in general, can be confusing to digest across various platforms and tiers, so let me break it down for you. Stadia, like I mentioned, streams games through Chrome or Safari if you're on iOS. Stadia is tied to your Google account and limited to mostly users in the US, Canada, and Europe. Stadia comes in two tiers. The first is a free version that gives you access to all of the games with some free choices. Cyberpunk was one of them, but I don't know if that's necessarily a good thing. But mostly games you have to pay full price for. The other is a pro tier subscription, which runs $9.99 a month. There's a free 1-month trial period, but that pretty much unlocks a bunch of games you can play as part of the subscription. Think of it as sort of Netflix for video games. You don't actually own the games, you don't buy the games, but when you're on the Pro subscription, you can play any of the games that are available as you like. There are plenty of major labels and popular games in the library, including Assassin's Creed, Destiny 2, NBA 2K21. It's a pretty respectable full list of games. The Pro subscription gets you 4K 60 FPS gaming with surround sound, which, depending on the screen you're using, might not matter that much. But if you are streaming to a 4K TV, it might be worth the upgrade just for the graphics alone. So depending on the tier you choose, you're either paying full price for games or have a library to choose from, and you play those games through your browser, so you can open up Chrome on your Mac, for example, and play PUBG if you want. An obvious benefit to this is that you don't need to download any large game files, but on the flip side, to stream properly, you need a very fast internet connection. According to Google, a minimum speed of 10 megabits for 720, 20 megabits for 1080 HD, and 35 megabits for 4K streaming. In my tests, I was behind a VPN and averaging about 50 megabits, and aside from the occasional drop to 720p, the experience was pretty smooth. But you will need an internet connection to use Stadia, which means you won't be playing Stadia on any upcoming flights. And if you're using your phone for mobile service and you're not on Wi-Fi, you probably don't want to stream through Stadia, otherwise you might go through any data limits that you might have. But when you do have data or just a Wi-Fi connection, playing games on Stadia is easy enough, but you really are going to want to use the Stadia controller. These run around $70 and come in 3 different colors: just black, wasabi green, or this just white. Inside the box, the controller comes with a USB-C to A cable, power adapter, Google Chromecast Ultra, and power adapter with an integrated cable. The controller is full-fledged, weighing 268 grams and measures 163 by 105 by 65 millimeters with familiar and comfortable grips and button placements. It's comfortable to hold, and the slight matte finish is nice to the touch, though I'm not sure why they designed the L2 and the R2 buttons to touch the surface you put them on. So just be extra careful when placing the controller on desks or hard surfaces. The controller connects over Wi-Fi and Bluetooth 4.2, giving you about 6 to 8 hours of battery life. Part of that depends on whether or not you enable vibration for in-game feedback through the controller. Otherwise, where you have a USB-C port, you can plug in the controller. Oh, and there's a headphone jack as well. Nice. Overall, the experience streaming games through a web browser using the controller was really smooth. Stadia also lets you record or stream your gaming sessions directly to YouTube and connect with friends when you want to play with or against them in, say, Mortal Kombat. When it came to using Stadia on iOS, it was a bit more clunky. The experience on iOS was slow at times and occasionally unresponsive, just inconsistently buggy, but consistently enough for me to say that it was pretty buggy. It's a new feature being rolled out to Stadia, so I'll keep an eye on how it hopefully improves with future updates. But getting the controls and Safari to play nicely with Stadia was enough to make me think this wouldn't replace a Nintendo Switch or simply downloading the mobile version of NBA 2K21, for example, for you iOS users. But the thought of having serious gaming potential through the Safari browser on my phone or iPad really makes me look forward to what's possible in the future. So, should you get a subscription to Stadia or the Stadia controller? Well, if you're thinking this is going to replace an existing console that you have, it's probably not. Stadia is not going to replace an Xbox or a PlayStation. So, for those of you who wanted to maybe add something to your existing gaming setup, you probably won't feel that need. But if you've got a Chromecast TV and you don't already have a console, then Stadia might make a nice, lightweight addition to it. Assuming, of course, that you have fast and reliable internet. Now, if you are using a screen larger than a mobile phone, for example, you're going to want to use the controller. They can't imagine really gaming through a keyboard alone. It's just so much easier using the controller. So if you're planning on playing on a TV, for example, or on your laptop, the controller is going to make it a much more user-friendly experience, a much nicer gaming experience for you. If you're just thinking of gaming on your mobile phone, then the controller really depends on how mobile you want to be and how much you really game through your phone. For travelers, though, for people who are thinking Stadia might be able to be an on the go console when you're on the road, it's not going to cut it because you can't download any of the games for offline use. It would have been really nice for Google to have included some sort of offline capability for Stadia. I know it is a streaming service, but it would have been nice to have a tier or an option maybe to download one or two games, so let's say 48 hours a month, so that way if you're on a flight, you can play one of your games offline. All those would have been nice additional features. Having some offline functionality would make Stadia a lot more useful for people on the go so that you could play games in a flight. I know there are just some logistical issues with that, but not having any offline capability really limits where and when you can use Stadia. For those of you who want to game while you're traveling, your best bet is still the Nintendo Switch or Nintendo Switch Lite. Both of those have offline games, you can download them, and they're not too much bigger than this controller. So if you're going to carry something around as big as the controller, then the Nintendo Switch or Nintendo Switch Lite aren't too much bigger and they give you a lot more offline functionality. Maybe though you really like the convenience of being able to game right on your laptop, especially if that laptop is a MacBook. Most popular games are made for Windows PC only. So if you want to game on your Mac and you don't want to get an extra gaming laptop or a PC just to play games on, then Stadia brings all of those Windows games, a lot of those Windows games, onto your MacBook without having to do any kind of virtual machining or dual booting or having to download any additional software. It just works, so long as you are online. That's my review of Stadia and the Stadia controller. Let me know if you're using Stadia, and if you are, what games you're playing right now. Let me know down in the comments, and on your way down, hit the like and subscribe buttons. Just consider those extra points. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Be as mobile as it looks. Stadia gaming app, play games using data gaming, then the Nintendo Switch or the Nintendo